Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about adjustment disorders. What are they? What symptoms can we feel if we struggle with them? And what are our treatment options? And as always, if you're new to my channel, make sure you're subscribed and turn on those notifications so that when I post a video, you hear about it. But let's jump into what adjustment disorders are. I'm going to read to you a little bit of the criteria from the DSM so we can better understand how adjustment disorders are diagnosed. Now, there are 5 main criteria that fall under the adjustment disorders diagnosis. And the first is that the development of emotional or behavioral symptoms in response to an identifiable stressor occurring within 3 months of the onset of the stressor. And I think that this is important because the development of an adjustment disorder has to occur within 3 months of the stressor happening. And that stressor could be something like, I have to move, or I lost my job, or I'm going through a tough divorce or breakup. So we have that 3-month period, and I think that's kind of important for us to note because most diagnoses have some kind of time frame that we're looking for to make sure that we're getting the proper diagnosis. The second criteria is these symptoms or behaviors are clinically significant as evidenced by one or both of the following. So I have to have at least one or both of these. The first is marked distress that is out of proportion to the severity or intensity of the stressor, taking into account the external context and the cultural factors that might influence symptom severity and presentation. And I really like this because talking about the fact that our response to it is a little bit more than the actual situation warrants. That's when it becomes an issue, right? If we're having something that's really shitty happening to us, we can feel bad and that's part of like a normal human response. But if our response to that is like so much greater, that's when it's a diagnosable mental illness. And you see, I think that that's important to note because we're all human. We all have different responses, but when it gets kind of out of hand is when we really need to get help. And the second thing is that we have to have significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. And that is always part of a DSM diagnosis. And that's frankly just because if we're unable to do things in our regular life, that means we're being impaired by this mental health issue. And that mental health issue becomes a diagnosable mental illness. And the third criteria is that the stress-related disturbance does not meet the criteria for another mental disorder and is not merely an exacerbation of a pre-existing mental disorder. And they always say that because let's say we're already diagnosed with PTSD and the symptoms are kind of just an exacerbation of that, then that means that it's not an adjustment disorder because it doesn't fit this. So it's always important to note what other issues we have going on so that we make sure if we are given this diagnosis that it's the right one and that it's not just an exacerbation of something that we already had going on. And the final 2 criteria are, number 1, the symptoms do not represent normal bereavement. If we've lost someone in our lives that we loved and we miss them, that's okay. We can grieve. That's normal. The second is, once the stressor or its consequences have terminated, the symptoms do not persist for more than an additional 6 months. That's why this is called an adjustment disorder. I want you to keep that in mind because when we're struggling to adjust, that's when this would be diagnosed. But if the stressor or its consequences have ceased, they've been terminated, then if it goes on for an additional 6 months past that, it's not an adjustment disorder. It's probably something else. And I think it's important to note that attachment disorders fall under the same category as PTSD or reactive attachment disorders. They call this whole chapter trauma and or stress-related disorders. And I think that's kind of important to note, and it gives you an idea of what adjustment disorders really are and other things that kind of fall into the same type of category. Now, when we're diagnosing someone with an adjustment disorder, the reason that it's called adjustment disorders and it's not just adjustment disorder is because we need to specify whether it comes along with a depressed mood, anxiety, mixed anxiety and depressed mood, disturbance of conduct. There's a lot of different ways that this can present itself. And that's why it's called adjustment disorders. It's kind of an umbrella term for any of the things that we can feel and struggles we can have when we're trying to manage an intense life stressor. And when we're talking about the stressors that can lead to an adjustment disorder, these so-called stressors can be single events, meaning we had a really nasty breakup. That just happens once. Obviously, it can span over a chunk of time, but it's just a one event thing. Or it can be recurrent, meaning maybe we're having continued business problems or struggles at school or marital issues that are happening at different times, like every few months or every few weeks, we're having another issue. Either way, that can still lead to an adjustment disorder. It doesn't have to be a one single event or multiple, it can be either or. And it's also important to remember that these stressors can happen to individuals, meaning like I went through a breakup, therefore it's happened to me and potentially my ex-partner, or it can happen to entire groups. Like let's say we have some kind of environmental issue, a flood, an earthquake, that can cause an adjustment disorder in everyone that's affected. So it can happen to individuals as well as larger groups. And the reason that I think this is so important to talk about is because adjustment disorders themselves are linked to an increased risk of suicide. They find people who struggle with adjustment disorders, if left untreated, have a higher risk of having a suicide attempt or even just thoughts of suicide. So it's important that we talk about it and we get treatment sooner rather than later. The way that we differentiate adjustment disorders from PTSD is that when it comes to adjustment disorders, it doesn't matter the severity of the stressor. If you remember, the first criteria when it comes to PTSD being diagnosed is that we have to be traumatized. We have to fear for our life or the life of someone else. The severity has to be very high. When it comes to adjustment disorders, it doesn't really matter. And the last thing in the DSM that I want to touch on is that an adjustment disorder is not a normal stress reaction. In the DSM, they call these normative stress reactions. And it states, when bad things happen, most people get upset. Duh, right? We're human. That's how we react. This is not an adjustment disorder. The diagnosis should only be made when the magnitude of distress, for example, the anxiety, changes in mood or conduct, exceed what would normally be expected, which may vary in different cultures. So taking into account where you live and what's kind of quote unquote normal in your society and in your culture, if our reaction to the distress is way more than expected or than what's normal, that's when it's an adjustment disorder. Otherwise, it's just a normal reaction to shitty things happening. Now, obviously, everyone is going to experience an adjustment disorder differently. Like I told you at the beginning, there are a bunch of different ways that it can be experienced with depressed mood or anxiety, but some of the most common symptoms are, and I'm reading from my notes, insomnia or fatigue, so being super tired, but then when you lay down, you're just not able to go to sleep, crying easily, having a lot of anxiety or anxious feelings in our body, like heart palpitations, sweating hands, having suicidal thoughts, body aches or soreness, maybe thinking that we're sick. A lot of people, when I was reading about this, reported going to the doctor first thinking that they had the flu or something. Come to find out it was because of that divorce they're going through or that really terrible thing that was happening at work. And the final symptom that they talk about the most is impulsivity. We might act rashly, make decisions that normally would take us months in a matter of seconds. In all of these symptoms, it's important to note that once that stressor is gone and it isn't in our life anymore, what we're feeling doesn't last more than 6 months. If it does, then again, adjustment disorders it's not the right diagnosis for you. And the most important thing, treatment options. And as always, adjustment disorders are managed best when we get treatment quickly. And the first option for treatment is therapy. Since the situation and stress are what causes adjustment disorders, having someone you can go to that you trust, where you can vent about what's going on and talk it through, get time to process it, and then be given some tools and techniques to try out on your own can be really beneficial. And the best types of therapy for adjustment disorders are, number one, CBT. The second is family or group therapy, as well as support groups, because if it's happening to a bunch of you, let's say as a family you got evicted from your home, all of you could benefit from seeing someone. And in a group setting, it could help you all better understand how each of you are feeling and validate your experience. And the final one that they mentioned is just talk therapy. Like I said, being able to vent about it, talk about it, get some tools and techniques can be all that we really need in order to process through what's gone on and help us feel better. And if therapy isn't enough, as always, medication is there to help as well. Since adjustment disorders can come along with feelings of anxiety or depression, they find SNRIs and SSRIs, otherwise known as antidepressants, to be super beneficial. So if you feel like you're drowning in your symptoms and things aren't getting better, make sure you talk to your doctor and see if medication is an appropriate choice for you. Since adjustment disorders are caused by stress and bad things happening in our life, it's important for us to know how to prevent it from happening again. And no, unfortunately, I'm not God. We can't control the world around us. I can't stop stressful things from happening to me or to you, but there are things that we can do to help us feel better, be more supported, so that when bad things happen, we're able to rebound more quickly. And it doesn't, follow us and bother us for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, where we just feel terrible. And so obviously the first way to prevent adjustment disorders from happening is to build up your support system. These can be people in your real life. That's why support groups can be amazing. This could be family, friends. These could be groups that you join. Finding people who enjoy the same things that you do and having a group of people to support you and uplift you when you're having a hard time can keep us out of the depths and keep us out of struggling with an adjustment disorder. And the second way to prevent adjustment disorders from happening to us is to do self-care regularly. This can look different from person to person, but we have to make sure that we're giving to ourselves as much as we're putting out to other people. And so that may mean that you take time reading that book you've been putting off, or journaling, taking a hot bath, going for a walk, petting some animals, whatever it is for you that helps fill you up and make you feel better. We need to make sure we're doing that regularly. This isn't just a, oh crap, I haven't taken care of myself, I'm gonna do it all today. These are things that we should do every few days. Maybe every day. Do at least one thing that's really good for you, makes you feel better, because having a support system around us that lifts us up when we need it most and is there when we're having a really shit time, as well as doing some self-care and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves regularly, can really decrease the likelihood of us getting an adjustment disorder in the first place. So make sure you give those things a try. Try to boost those up in your life so that you are more well equipped to fight against stresses that can come up without any warning at all. This video has been brought to you by the Kenyans on Patreon. If you would like to support the creation of these mental health videos, click the link in the description and check it out. As always, leave in the comments, what are some things that you do to help build up your armor against adjustment disorders or feelings of depression or anxiety? Let us know, because together, you and me, we're working towards a healthy mind and a healthy body. And I will see you next time.